speak for about 15 minutes and then invite you to join in a conversation. I'm here to talk about whether it's possible to live together in the church with those who share a different biblical hermeneutic around issues of human sexuality, particularly around what's happening, forgive me being Church of England, what's happening in the Church of England at the moment. And in Wales too, actually. Some of which fills me with hope, some of which, as you'll hear from this talk, I don't find particularly encouraging at all. So first of all, a bit about me. I got married last year to my long-term partner, and when we got engaged on February 14, 2014, I didn't have any real understanding of what that was going to cause to happen. To me, it was just about me and my partner getting engaged and wanting to get married, having spent 15 years together. But this last year has been something of an education for me in the ability of Christians to roundly hate those that they've never met. I've experienced quite a lot of that, and our tendency to view a whole person through just one aspect of their personhood before God. And that's perhaps the first thing I want to say about this debate that's going on, and that we should be aware of in this debate. For most of my 25 years of ministry in the Church of England, being gay, and clearly I am gay, has not been the most important thing about me at all. I am a Catholic Anglican, convincedly Catholic, and that has been a problem for some people throughout my ministry. I am in favour of the ordination of women, and that has been a problem for a lot of my fellow Catholics in the Church of England. And I also have a reputation for being able to have a kind of row in a room on my own, which has been a problem for me and for my curates over the years. But throughout my ministry, at no point in the selection process, my training, and in probably the first 20 years of my ministry, was my being gay a problem. And that has become a problem, particularly, I think, in the church in the last few years. So what's changed? I think the first thing that's changed is that the world has changed, we all know that, and the churches have found themselves sort of left behind in a world which they no longer recognise. Back in the day, most churches, it was pretty much okay to be gay, so long as you didn't make a fuss, you didn't camp it up too much, you didn't frighten the people in the pews or the horses. And by the way, I'm talking about being gay, because I think being lesbian in the churches is completely invisible even today, in much the same way that being a woman has been pretty much invisible and ignored for a very long time. Being a lesbian is unimaginable to most of the sort of white, male, pale and straight men who run the churches. But as you know, society has changed. What was the same both in society and in the church, that acceptable compromise of knowing but not knowing, has given way in wider society to sort of wider acceptance. Look around us here today, the place is full of people, most of whom probably aren't gay or lesbian, who are celebrating the freedom of us to be ourselves in the wider society, of different sexual identities being recognised and celebrated and protected. And that's left the church feeling a bit like that proverbial pork pie at a Jewish wedding, both uncomfortable, unwelcome, and very unsure of itself. And the response to that has, in some sections of the church, has been a retreat into an ever narrower definition of what it is acceptable in terms of human sexuality. And particularly in England, that's been coupled with the rise of a very strong and well-led evangelical movement. And that's led to very deep and divisive battle lines, not just, of course, against the Church of England, but I think in most major denominations. And I think what's made it worse is the failure of our leadership to address those battle lines effectively and to challenge the homophobia that is so often expressed in the church. That's partly because most of the straight leadership of the church is suspicious of us as gay people, and they think we're rather icky, and we get up to nasty things in the rest of our lives when we're not making quiche and plumping cushions. They don't really see us as whole people, they see us as a single sexual act, which most of us, of course, don't indulge in. So, those are some of the reasons why I think the church has got itself into the position that it's currently in, the change in society. But I think the other thing that we have to remember is that I also think that those of a more conservative background actually are bound to feel that they've given enough away in terms of other battles that we've fought. And I think the Conservatives think that they found in us, in the gay community, a battle that they think they can win in the church. After all, they've lost over divorce and remarriage, because a lot of them get divorced and remarried themselves. It's already interesting, isn't it, when you see somebody attacking people who want to get married in the gay community from the sanctity of their third marriage, when most of us would be quite happy with just one. And they've also lost over ordained women, haven't they? Well, sort of lost. The Church of England's done a really disgraceful compromise. But actually the Church of England officially says we recognise women in every level of ordained ministry. So I think there's a real tendency in the evangelical conservative part of the church to think that this battle, the battle of a relatively small minority within the church, which a lot of people find difficult to comprehend, is a battle that they are going to win. Now, a little bit of history. I don't know whether you know the background to the growing homophobia of the church, but the first sign of kind of recognition that there was going to be a battle came in about 1987 with a man called Tony Higton. Have you heard of Tony Higton? Evangelical, very conservative, put a motion to the English General Synod which said that it reaffirmed a traditional sexual ethic and condemned, in a nice neat little phrase, homosexual genital sexual acts. Which is a really nice little phrase, isn't it? And that phrase has lived on in the life of the church ever since. And it's had one really interesting effect. It has reduced gay people and lesbian people to that one thing. It's reduced us to a genital sexual act. People can't see us as whole people. And then the next target for the Conservatives to continue to push their agenda in the church was a pretty anodyne report called the Osborne Report, which was supposed to have been published in about 1989. The House of Bishops commissioned it, a whole bunch of theologians produced it, and it recommended a careful reflection upon the biblical text and the pastoral theology around human sexuality. The Conservatives in the church threw their hands up in horror, and it was officially suppressed and not released. And it's actually banned from publication for 25 years. The House of Bishops then produced their own report called Issues in Human Sexuality in 1991. It's just now called Issues. And have you all heard of this report? You'll have heard of it. So basically, an internal report for the House of Bishops, which talks about homophiles. It's a lovely word, homophile. Apparently I'm a homophile. It again restates the traditional sexual ethic, says that gay and lesbian people are welcome in the church so long as we don't do anything. And it has become a sort of ordination standard. So without any debate in our parliaments, in our church, without any discussion more widely, unless you subscribe to this particular report, you cannot be selected for ordination in the Church of England. And if you're a person who's senior in the church, like Geoffrey John, who disagrees with it, you will not get to be a bishop in the Church of England. Very specifically, he's been deliberately excluded, as have a number of other people. Part of what this is doing is, and it started in 1991, but a deliberate and conscious attempt to exclude progressive Christians from leadership within the church. And actually that is getting much worse in the Church of England at the moment. So, what we've seen, of course, in the last 20 years has been a growing conservatism in the church, backed up by a series of reports, but at the same time, a growing liberalism and progressiveness in wider society. And in the wider world, the bishops of the Anglican Church got together in 1998, and they too condemned homosexual practice. And what's known as Lambeth 110 has become a standard with which not just to beat individual Christians, but whole churches. So the American Episcopal Church was recently told that it should leave the Anglican Communion by the new General Secretary of the Anglican Communion, who's a Nigerian Archbishop called Idu, because they support marriage equality. He suggested that they should campaign against marriage equality, and if they can't do so, they're not fit to be Anglicans in the Anglican Communion. So, that's the kind of background of what's going on in the Church of England. There's increasing conservatism, a growth of evangelicalism, a sort of cognitive dissonance within the Church about who it thinks it is against what the world is doing. And then, of course, last year we got marriage equality passed in England. And that led to the writing of a pastoral letter from the Church of England bishops that sort of bewailed this new reality. Said quite publicly that any lay Anglicans who choose to get married can do so, and that we shouldn't be excluded from the church or not given communion, which is a lovely thing for them to actually say in public. But also said that clergy themselves could not get married, and if they did so, they were breaking the discipline of the church and would be subject to punishment. So far, 2 of us have got married publicly. I have been disciplined, and the other priest has been denied a job. You will have heard also most recently that there's a reader in the church who's been in a civil partnership for 9 years. He is going to marry his partner, and the Archbishop of York, who's not my favourite person, has withdrawn his permission to function as a reader in the church, and it's caused a big stink in England. That letter that was published last year, of the 43 bishops who were present when that letter was passed, I don't really know this, 21 of them refused to vote for it, 1, the Bishop of Manchester, voted against, and only 22 actually approved it. So even in the House of Bishops, they are enormously divided. And the most recent survey of British social attitudes in 2013 shows that less than 20% of Pew Anglicans are against gay and lesbian relationships. So the vast majority of the church, 80%, is in favour, but our leadership and our official statements are against. The Archbishop of Canterbury, I'm going to read you something he said, has defined one of his priorities as reconciliation. He says, we must find ways of disagreeing, perhaps very passionately, but loving each other deeply at the same time, and being deeply committed to each other. That's the challenge for the church, if we're actually going to speak to our society, which is increasingly divided in many different ways. To respond to that call for reconciliation, he set up what's called facilitated conversations. So within every diocese of the Church of England, and you're doing it in Wales as well, aren't you? Certain people are being selected by their bishops to go away for 3 or 4 days to talk about human sexuality in small groups. Great that the Church is doing this, but there are real problems with this, because those people are being selected by the bishops, they're going away for a few days to talk to each other, and there's no outcome from those discussions. There are going to be no reports published, there's going to be no feedbacks even to the bishops, there's going to be no attempt to gather the learning of those experiences into the wider church itself. So it's a huge expenditure, £360,000 they're spending, with no discernible outcome. And a lot of us, like me, are deeply suspicious that this is an attempt to kick the subject of human sexuality into the long grass and try and push it into the future in the hope that something else will come up and distract the church, particularly progressives like us, from the debate and stop us having the discussions and the fights that we're currently having around marriage equality. Should we and can we live together, given this is the situation? Personally, I have a real problem that it should be suggested that we could live together well in the church when there is such a power imbalance between those who control and run the church and those of us who are more progressive in our understandings, because they control all the levers of power and access to power, and consciously are seeking to exclude the more progressive Christian from ordination and leadership within the church. I don't think that can be genuine reconciliation within the church when people like us are asking to be set free from oppression and being told all the time that we must stay where we are and continue to be oppressed and accept it because it's good for the whole church, which is effectively what we are being told. I want to give you an example of what this has led to. Do you know about Hillsong Church, the little collective of churches? So the leader of Hillsong published a letter a couple of weeks ago. Did you read it? Yes. He said that it's basically, I'm going to read out what my paraphrase of his letter is. Basically, he said, some of my friends are gay, so I can't be homophobic. So if you're tempted to be gay and have tried tying whites on it and had electric shock therapy and a little bit of exorcism, and you think you still might be tempted to be gay, then of course you are welcome to attend our churches, but please sit at the back. You can't take part in anything, and we'll tell you regularly that your life is wrong. Oh, and by the way, please fill in a tithing form on the way out. That's basically Hillsong, isn't it? Pretty much. An evangelical Anglican I know in Oxford responded to this by saying, I appreciate Brian's view that others are free to live as they would like to live within certain rational parameters, and that no matter what, Christians and the gay community are called to disagree and to love one another. I hope our generation can achieve this instead of lampooning each other from afar and not loving our enemies, but hating them and cursing them. Well, Jesus said, you've heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbour and hate your enemy, but I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. We then had an interesting conversation when I asked him about his dichotomy between gay people and Christians, because clearly I'm gay and a Christian, and his suggesting that I might be his enemy. And actually, after a very long conversation, at the end of which he accused me of trolling him and blocked me, he basically said that anybody who supports a progressive agenda is the enemy of faithful Bible-believing Christians, and we cannot be seen as fellow Christians alongside him and his churches. I think that's a pretty common point of view in some sections of the evangelical movement. And I don't think there is much discussion that can be had with that particular point of view. So I am not hopeful that we can easily live alongside those who oppose a progressive view of the church when that kind of attitude is allowed to exist in the church and goes unchallenged by the leadership. And I think the leadership is too scared to challenge that attitude, and therefore it will continue to be present and possibly will even grow in influence. I would like to see the church reach a point where we can treat human sexuality in the same way we treat remarriage of divorcees and even the ordination of women clergy. I'm not sure that's going to be possible in this issue. And I was present at a meeting in Lambeth Palace where we were told, supposedly confidence, I'm being videoed on time, that actually the church is preparing to split on this issue, and it's expected that maybe 20% of the church will leave over the issues of human sexuality, even if the compromise is something fairly anodyne, like allowing churches which want to do so to offer services of prayer after civil marriage. That's what I think. I am more optimistic. I'm interested to know what you think from your experience so far. Anybody got anything to say? You can shout out the noise.
What about the Welsh perspective?
Yes. I'm sorry for being so relentlessly negative. My parishes are great.
I wanted to say from a Welsh perspective, I thought it was quite timely that the consultation on same-sex marriage was sent out this year, the same year that is the first year that the gay community have had a faith tent at Pride. And I was quite encouraged by that perhaps something prophetic is going on, that it's the time when Archbishop Barry's been brave enough to say, let's consult on this, see what people think. The same year, we've got a faith tent here at Pride, and it's almost like the two different angles coming together with in a brave way, I suppose, each way, perhaps a bit more tentative for the church. But I've been really pleased this morning that the Pride have been immensely grateful for us being here, and that actually gives me goose pimples how welcoming the gay community have been in a faith tent here. So I thought it was nice.
I also think the Welsh experience is different because you're a smaller church, you're more monochrome, aren't you, in terms of your traditions. One of the things that marks out the Church of England is that we've got a very large and strong evangelical movement, which you don't have so much of over here. And maybe one of my hopes for you is that actually your experience of this will be different. I think the English future is very different than what you might have in Wales, because I think you approached it, and your Archbishop helped you approach it in a much more upfront kind of way, with much less of the kind of bullying and denial of access which we're seeing in England. I think that's also true in Scotland, which is true supportive of marriage equality, and particularly so in the American Episcopal Church. So maybe your experience here is going to be different from the experience that we get in England, and that's a good thing, I think.
Any Church in Wales folks want to comment?
It's interesting hearing Andrew's experience. Until 6 months ago I was a priest in the Church of England, and when I wrote and told my bishop that my partner and I were getting engaged with a view to either marriage or civil partnership, I got a wonderful email back, the first half of which was congratulations to you and Claudio. However, if you follow path A and get married, the consequences will be the following. And I have to say, the bishop who wrote that, I used to serve as his chaplain, and he's one of my oldest friends, and I haven't spoken to him since because I'm fearful of what I might actually say to him, because I know what his real opinions are on the subject. Now, Andrew told us that 21 bishops of the Church of England abstained in that vote on the so-called Valentine's Day statement. The day that Andrew got engaged, you were off on holiday, weren't you? And you arrived back home to find the statement and a letter from your bishop as well? Yeah. I have to say, in Wales, I've returned to the Church in Wales after 10 years in the Church of England, and the approach the bishops are taking is much more pastoral, much more pragmatic, because we're a smaller church, and as priests we tend to have everybody in our diocese, and we rub along together. So we have friends with traditional Catholics, evangelicals and so on, and the conservative evangelical tradition is extremely small in the Church in Wales. So hopefully in Wales we'll have a bit more common sense about it. It's going to the governing body of the Church in Wales in September. We've had consultations in all 6 dioceses to try and hear the mind of the Church. It went quite positively in Clonduff. It was a 50-50 split in Monmouth, and I think in some of the more rural dioceses it went in a very conservative way, St David's in particular. But that was a consultation for the bishops to hear the mind of the Church. And I think we're lucky in Wales that all 6 of our bishops are pro-marriage equality.
7 with David.
Sorry?
7 bishops with David. 7
bishops, with the assistant bishop in my life. So I hope they have the courage of their convictions to hear the mind of the majority of people in Wales and go with equal marriage.
Actually, what you've made reminded me about the one thing, given that so many people within the churches are in favour of equality, and it's a massive majority, every single person in this tent at the moment who's in favour of equality, every time you meet a bishop, say to them, what are you doing about this and why are you letting it be like this? Because unless they hear from people constantly saying to them, you can't do this, you shouldn't do this, they will just carry on thinking they're right. Because it's a bit like the Queen, wherever she goes the world smells of fresh paint and flowers. Bishops, wherever they go, they see full churches and everyone being nice to them. Actually, it's about time we stopped, and it's about time we started saying to them, this is doing real damage to our mission and to real people's lives, and it has to stop. And we know what you genuinely think, and it's not good enough to whisper words of comfort in our ears, whilst at the same time writing letters like the one that you got, and actually the one that I got, because my bishop who wrote me the same sort of letters is a gay man in a relationship with another gay man for 30 years, and everybody knows about it, but of course nobody knows about it. And until that stops, they will carry on behaving like they do. Did you want to say something? Because it's not just Anglicans in Wales, are there?
No. Just one comment. One of the things you just said just reminded me completely that everybody seems to, across the churches, across the Episcopal churches, seems to have forgotten that the church is its people, and its people are accepting. So it's time, you're quite right, that the bishops and the leaders understood that.
So get out and write your letters. And don't stop going to church. One of the problems I have in my parish is that I have lots said they've had enough. They won't go anymore. They believe in God and they go home and they say their prayers, but they won't be part of an institution which behaves like this. The real danger is if the progressives leave because we've treated so badly, then we will be giving ground to a whole bunch of people who don't think the way we do. It's nearly half past. We're going to have some more worship, aren't we, I think? Thank you very much. If you want to chat with me afterwards, please do. I can now go and have a drink as well, which would be very nice. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, we'll just have a